Hi, I'm John Emmett here with Restart Sailing. It's time to talk to the Moth class, and I'm actually in the Shock workshop. So without further ado, to introduce Simon Hiscocks, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Moth class?
Yeah, hi, Simon Hiscocks, as you all know. I've been a Moth sailor for, how long? 2011, I think I've finished my first Moth.
So you've done your first decade then?
I have done a whole decade, yes, and most winters in that decade as well. So, funnily enough, this was the first winter I decided to have a break.
So what did you do this winter when you weren't on the Moth?
I didn't do any Moth sailing this winter. I decided to take the winter off, which obviously coincidentally happened to coincide, or happily coincide with being very quite difficult to go sailing.
Yes, absolutely.
Not impossible, but it was. A few people did go off beaches and the like, but it was more tricky than not, and it was a nice, good time to have a break. Yeah,
and did you do anything bit specific with the break, or was it just?
Not really. A little bit more mountain biking than I have done. Some kayaking, and you know, just hanging out with the family and some work, and you know, just having a step back from it, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes a little break is really good, and you've been in sailing just forever. Before we did, you know, the Moth thing, you're double Olympic medalist, and it must say a lot that this is your weapon of choice to sail after being right at the very front. Looking back, do you think that's made you sort of move down to Weymouth and be here, your love of the sport, and Olympic sailing?
Well, moving to Weymouth, happened during our Olympic sailing, really, and
because you were spending a lot of time here.
There was a period when I moved into a little flat in Southsea actually, and we've been training at Hayling Island, and then we ended up commuting from there to here.
That's a big commute for people who don't know.
Yeah, well, it was an hour and a half day. It isn't all bad because you do get a good long debrief and time to reflect both directions, which you do miss actually when you live really close to where you sail and you have to kind of build that time in. So then we ended up just moving here and living here because it was the best place to go training.
Absolutely.
At the time in the 49er was, you were still really searching for flat water to do meaningful training, particularly as the breeze got up.
And Portland Harbour.
Portland Harbour's plenty of flat water. The only thing that stops you sailing here is is wind speed.
Too much
wind.
Most of it, yeah.
Which sometimes it's got plenty of too much wind, but it's got lots of windsurfing and other things to offer as well. Actually, it's funny enough because as the time now, I mean, that was nearly 20 years ago now.
Time flies. It's scary, isn't it?
It does go fast, yeah. And I mean, you must have lived here about the same length of time, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm still living in the flat that I bought temporary.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem because you spend so much time away, don't you? It's a temporary place to live as well.
And your career, as in your day-to-day job, is actually very connected to sailing. We're here in your workshop. Can you tell us a bit about that and what it was like during the lockdown as well?
Yeah, well, this lockdown, it wasn't so bad. The first lockdown wasn't bad either, actually. We just had to read the rules several times to check that we were actually allowed to go to work. The vibe was not to go to work, but we were allowed to, and it was fine to, and we carried on both times. Really, the first time with quite a bit of stress, really, because it felt like the world was imploding and there wasn't going to be any work.
It was a great unknown, wasn't it?
As it happened, I mean, I've still got the grants and sat in the bank account, so we didn't even need to tap into those. They were sort of became a bit of security.
Yeah, safety net.
Now, I guess we've been lucky in that sense, and our some of our customers are almost recession-free with the Olympic side, and the Moth class actually is another big point of business for us, and that is full of very, very keen sailors and
who are not going to be dissuaded by anything.
So we've kept going all the whole time without too much trauma, which is is very lucky for us, really, because it feels quite awkward to say that, because there's a lot of people around who have suffered quite badly, and not just from a health perspective, but from work and
the mental health perspective that goes with that.
It comes from if you work in hospitality and you haven't got an industry, it's pretty tough, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mental health issues. come alongside that, don't they, to a certain extent? So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, we define ourselves by who we are. You know, I've been called Sailor John or whatever, and you just realise that actually that's a very big part, and when you're not able to do what you're normally able to do. But it does feel like things are opening up, not only in the UK, which is doing very well with the vaccine, but worldwide. And does this mean things are getting busier for you? Or
actually, pretty similar, really. This time of year where people start going sailing again.
The weather's meant to be improving.
Yeah, it's been a little bit cold the last few daes, but we've had plenty of nice weather as well. But yeah, this time of year it would normally pick up, and we'd see good sales. A lot of our web sales go abroad,
Right.
So and even in our winter it's summer somewhere.
Yes,
So-
always.
It's slightly less seasonal than it could be, but. What am I saying? I would say it was pretty normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really good to
Yeah.
hear. And back to the moth class, I mean, what's actually going